Welcome to our podcast, From Stardust to Us, in-depth conversations with thought leaders, artists, and spiritual activists navigating the challenges of our times with integrity, joy, and purpose. I'm Linnell Hayden, an advocate for animals and the natural world, a world traveler fascinated by other cultures and spiritual traditions, and these passions have deeply inspired both my life and my work.
I'm Bernice Marie Daly. I'm a contemplative activist and a spiritual guide across wisdom traditions. Welcome, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am grateful and honored to welcome Jan Phillips. And Jan, I've been touched and inspired by your work for decades now. And I'm so grateful for your open-hearted sharing both of your life and the span of your work and your presence with us. You inspire each of us, as you say, to connect the dots between creativity, spirituality, and social agency. So for those in our audience who are meeting Jan for the first time, I would like, if you don't mind, to say a few words by way of introduction. So Jan Phillips is a writer, storyteller, and workshop facilitator who provokes thought and inspires action. I have to say, I love that expression, provoking thought and inspiring action, and connecting heart and brain. Jan uses images and music and poetry and stories to evoke non-dualistic original thinking and expression. Jan is the founder and executive director of Livingkindness Foundation, an organizer for Livingkindness Learning Center in Kaduna, Nigeria. Jan has taught in 23 countries, has published 10 award-winning books, and 3 CDs of original music. So we'll begin our conversation now, inspired by Jan's book, No Ordinary Time.
Yeah, that's really nice. Made me feel good about myself right off the bat.
Well, Jan, I've been a huge fan of yours for many years. I discovered your book, No Ordinary Time, and I'm not even sure how I discovered your work, but I'm a subscriber to your newsletter, and I've listened to your podcast. Your poetry is just beautiful. No Ordinary Time was the first book I read about the evolutionary emerging consciousness that is coming to be in our current time. And it really just sort of opened my mind and my heart. Your book speaks of this new rise, this rise in this new consciousness where we're all one, sort of a non-duality spirituality. If I've gotten that right, certainly correct me if I'm misunderstanding anything in the book. But we've been conditioned our entire lives to think of ourselves as separate from the benevolent creator, God. And many of us find comfort in praying to this God. How would a benevolent creator God then that might be, or is he or she separate from us, fit into this emerging global connected consciousness? Or does it?
Well, I don't think it fits into us. I think we fit into it. And that sometimes I think of us as cells in the body of God, the cosmos being the divine mystery, that God. I can't imagine a personified God anymore. I think the Sistine Chapel should be covered with mirrors. But so say you're a cell in the toe of God, and I'm a cell in the elbow of God, and Bernice is a cell in the forehead of God. It takes all of us, and we're all like integral to the thing, even though we're infinitesimal. You know, they've gotten inside atoms, inside particles, inside photons. We keep drilling down, down, down. And the same is true for the outer. You can't imagine an end to infinity or an end. Even the black holes are nurseries for galaxies. So there's no beginning, there's no end. And that's the great deep mystery that I'm ensconced in. And in terms of that God that you can image as that patriarchal figure on a throne in the sky, I do everything I can do to have people not image that. You know, all my life I'm sitting around campfires singing, he's got the whole world in his hands. And now I don't sing that song. I boycott that song because now the world is in a state of tragic condition because we're pillaging her, and we all know how, we all know why. But nobody's stopping it. We keep singing, he's got the whole world in his hand. We keep calling out to an outer being who I think is not there to help us because Earth is our planet. We are the most creative parts that we know of. We have the most evolutionary minds that we know of. And it's our job to take care of our own nest in the same way Mother Albatross teaches her little baby albatrosses to poop outside of the nest. It's natural, it makes sense, but religions, in my opinion, are the epitome of the problem. Even as a gay person, as a lesbian, as a member of LGBT, somebody told me yesterday Canada is issuing warnings to Canadians who are LGBTQ peeps to watch out because they're in danger when they come down here now, because there's such a outburst of hatred that's newly rising as part of this rising right-wing nationalistic movement. So in nature, in politics, in culture, religion has inspired some wrong thinking. So I'm part of my job is to say, you know, Meister Eckhart said the process of enlightenment is a process of subtraction, not addition. So people in seeking enlightenment in anywhere need not read more books. They need to dust off the light bulb of their own radiance and get re-examine everything they think. And as Walt Whitman said in his preface to Leaves of Grass, dismiss whatever insults your soul. That's our job. Re-examine what we've learned and dismiss what insults our soul. Subtract, subtract, subtract. Once we get clean enough, clear enough, pure enough, we'll understand our place in the family of things and start doing and writing and preaching the right thing.
It's lovely. So I guess as a follow-up then, when one does pray for whatever help, assistance, we're praying to the whole then, not God, so to speak. And it doesn't have to be the patriarchal God. You know, I'm very much in love with the indigenous, you know, nature-based traditions as well. Am I overthinking this and trying to?
You just made me think of a story Greg Braden told once. He was in New Mexico and staying with, researching whatever, Native American tribe. There hadn't been rain forever. The state was in a drought. So the Native American man said, come on with me. They took their Jeep up to the mountaintop. He goes, I'm going to pray rain. So Greg Braden gets out of the Jeep and says, well, okay, I can't wait to see how you pray for rain. And the native guy says to him, I don't pray for rain, I pray rain. I'm praying rain. And he just let himself go and did this kind of dance and this kind of chanting stuff, and nothing happened. They get back in the Jeep, go down into the place where he lived. And then the next day, the rains came and the drought was over.
Mm.
You know, I say my prayers every day. I'm in my bed. I'm never praying for anything. I pray, nor do I pray to anyone. My image that I have now is that the divine thing is all around me. The air, it's the air that I'm breathing. The divine thing is also in my lungs because my body holds this air that I'm breathing. So it's only fake, made up, ridiculous boundaries. And I think that because we've been given this lifetime on Earth, it's a phase. We're going through a phase of having 5 senses so that we can experience. So I can look out there and see how beautiful a bougainvillea is, right? So I can feel the fur of my kitty cat, right? So we have these senses, but like death is only a quarter of the way through the experience, right? It's not, it doesn't end something. It just is time for something else to happen. So I'm fully embodied. I'm in this mystical experience of earthiness. I'm still one with that great thing, and I'm not seeking anything. It's kind of the Buddhist mandate as opposed to the Christian mandate, go and teach all nations. That's how come I became a nun. That's how come I went around the world on a peace pilgrimage. But then I run into Buddhism. And that mandate is sit down and shut up and understand that everything's unfolding perfectly. So when you put those two things together, what formerly were polar opposites are now the non-dual experience, which contains both the yin of Buddhism, the yang of Christianity. Yes, pray all the time and do the good acts. So that I'm in prayer for an hour each day, approximately, just means I'm sitting in my bed. I have my coffee cup there. I have my 2 candles burning on my bookshelf where my little altar is. And I'm not paying any attention to television, iPhones, newspapers. I have nothing on my bed but a journal. Because then ideas come, like Emily Dickinson. The only news I get all day is bulletins. The only news I get is bulletins all day from immortality. And I feel like that was her language. My language is, I feel like a satellite dish to mind at large. And that my divine being is intelligence. Mm. That's it, right? My new trinity is intelligence, love, and beauty. That's the triad that I'm a part of. Mm. And so when intelligence is conveyed through the atmosphere, it's like thoughts penetrate me like raindrops, saturated with divine brilliance. And so it's like taking the call. It happens all day and all night. It happens in our dreams, happens in our waking hours, happens when we're in the grocery line, happens on the freeways. All the time, mind at large is saturating us with itself. But we most readily make ourselves available to it when we say, all right, I'm going to listen now. All right, call it meditation, call it contemplation, call it your spiritual practice, whatever you want. It's hard to use words for it because then people think there's rules attached to it. No rules, just sit down and be quiet. And try to I don't care when my thoughts come like bushels of stupidity. My thoughts just come through all the time. And I'm like, well, once I notice it's been 5 minutes of, errant thinking, then I pay attention to my breath a little bit, try and get back in a little more quiet mode. But I think that's what's going on. I don't know even now what your question was, but you made me say those words.
That's wonderful.
Well,
No, I loved your in your book how you said when you first started meditating, you would sit quietly with the candle, and I started that after I read your book years ago, and that helped me get into my morning routine. So thank you for that.
Isn't it better? Because when I have my eyes open and I'm looking at the candle is unpredictable.
Mm.
It's fire. It's the thing I'm not. And so I can relate to that candle flame. Whereas if I close my eyes, I just go down into my own world, and it's very hard to be with in the way I want to be with
Mm.
the not me.
I like to pursue this a little differently. Quoting you, you say at one point that it's really important that we remember to think when our very thoughts are shaping the world. Quoting you, our very thoughts are shaping the world. And in the midst of a process of coming, hopefully, to birthing a new consciousness, I am interested in knowing the common experience of suffering and the place of, if at all, of suffering as you see it, as we are trying to birth this new consciousness.
Well, it's right there in the book. And I use Teilhard de Chardin as the best way I have of understanding it. And he says that suffering or evil is the statistical necessity of an organism in the process of complexifying.
Right.
I had to read it a few times, but then it made sense.
Right.
We're an organism. It's like Earth would have sufferings of her own, not even because of humankind's errors, but eruptions, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, cyclones that might be interpreted as suffering for the planet, but it's just the statistical necessity because the planet is evolving. We're the signs of her evolution. And as the parts of her that are visibly evolving, we're making a ton of mistakes because that's what happens. Even in the garden, you look at the tulips and some of them are stronger than others. It's just how it goes. Take a kindergarten class. Some of them are going to make it and some of them are going to fail.
If we look at our possibility of catastrophe on the planet now, as we continue to devastate it and as we continue to have more destructive powers at our fingertips, it seems to me, and I've heard from various sources, not yourself, that humanity might be the species that's really under threat of extinction because we're destroying our basic life force system, and et cetera, et cetera. So I just find it intriguing and interesting to kind of parallel those two movements, that intensity of destruction, at least caused by humans, at least in that regard, and the birth pangs of trying to bring about a new consciousness, which you talk about as sort of knowing or claiming our sacred essence. And I think the fear and the sort of visceral anxiety that people are beginning to feel more and more when we hear more storms, more fires, more volcanoes, more all of that. And how to place that anxiety and catastrophe within a larger faith space of hope, of bringing about a sacred reality or a sacred consciousness. They seem to be almost at odds with each other. That's why I'm interested in sort of seeing how that all plays out. Of course, Teilhard has a very long vision, very far, very, very long, very far away. But you make reference to, well, it's our time, our job now is to call God home. And I'm just intrigued with how you see those pieces. So I just found that interesting.
Number one, when I think about the crisis that our Mother Earth is in, first off, my kind of personal egoistic response is, I'm glad I'm old. Right?
You're not the only one who said that.
And I keep trying to see, where are the millennials gathering? They're never where I am. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm at places at the cutting edge of consciousness, but it's looking very geriatric these days.
Right.
And so I yesterday when I had that question, it's like, where are they? What are they doing? Are they circling? Are they planning? Do they have ideas? Are they going to take it? Like, we were in the 70s very visible, very vocal. We caused the women's movement we caused us to be out of Vietnam. We caused the Berlin Wall to come down because things line up and happen according to agitation, consequences, right, etc.
Right.
And right now, I'm not seeing a huge movement. I read a quote from this guy, John Seed. He's a big his issue is the rainforest. And he says, I'm not John Seed saving the rainforest. I'm the rainforest saving itself through John Seed. And whenever I feel anxious, last time I felt anxious was when Ronald Reagan was president. I mean, big anxious. I have anxiety attacks plenty, but big anxious in the 80s when Reagan was president, talking about Star Wars, going to build a defense system that's out there in the atmosphere. It was like, he made me scary, and I was a cultural activist. And so the only thing I can do when I'm scared is to act. Even if in the middle of the night I wake up and have an anxiety attack, I have to get up, I have to come into my office, I have to do things, I have to get my mind on another track. And when it's a global issue, I have to make a plan that engages my whole body. That's what led to me making a year-long peace pilgrimage around the world, which led to me being a spiritual contemplative, more so even than a political activist. So that peace pilgrimage changed my life hugely. And now I'm noticing my response to the anxiety that I feel about my mother in trouble is, all right, what can I do? How can I help it? Right? I can send money to the Rainforest Alliance, which I do. But me personally, I always say for people to like bring their two poles together. What's breaking your heart and what do you most love to do? Figure out a way to bring those two things together and you'll get your right work figured out. So when I asked usually it's books, write a book about this, write a book about that. But my heart was more engaged with this issue. And so, I've been a photographer since 1975. And so when I asked myself the question, what can I do about the global crisis? It's like, use your photographs, present them in a way that stimulates awe. So when people experience awe, it causes a little misstep, right? Life just doesn't go on as usual. And if I catch them in a moment of awe, there's hope right there. And so this is where the muse enters in, or what a Catholic might call Holy Spirit. Every creative person knows you're not working alone. So the inspiration then came, well, then how do I cause awe? That's the big question. And then the inspiration comes and it says, look at your photographs and see what they say to you. So I spread a bunch of photographs out on my big dining room table. And how they spoke to me is this: put this one with that one, put that one with that one. It ended up being a series of pairings. And I hardly knew what I was doing, but it was always an image of a person by herself in nature, and then an image of nature by itself. And there was some connective tissue. There was some thread that connects these two pieces, either color, pattern, line, content, composition. Don't know. You never know. But if I said to you, I scatter all these pictures and said, okay, put together the ones that go together, you'd put the ones together, because there's something mystical that happens when you see these two objects together. So right now, for the last 2 months, I've been working with these pairings, and I've now got it up to 50 pairings of two pictures. When you stand before them, something happens. In my opinion, it provokes a deeper reverence about the earth. Because I don't want to be the one saying, shame on you, you're doing wrong, you're not recycling. That's not me. Bring them to awe, bring them to their knees. And so that's how I get to engage the people, to cause consciousness to change through a heart. They're not thinking about it. Of course, I tried to put a poem next to each one, but I quickly ripped it off the wall, because that's not about how we're thinking has gotten us into the mess. It's our heart that's going to get us out of the mess. And so every one of us who's consciously creating, who's being aware of our thoughts and making sure that we're managing them, not entertaining thoughts that are destructive, but really playing with thoughts that are about, okay, what can I do? How can I do it and have fun? How can I get it out to the world so that people could see it? Sometimes it's just being in a book club. So, because I'm the kind of person, I don't know what I'm thinking until somebody asks me. And then they just say blah, 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 blah. And I go, well, that's what I'm thinking. Right?
Yeah.
Why I'm grateful for you guys for asking me questions, because I didn't know I knew all this stuff. Anyway, I'm trying to get people to feel, and I join as many groups as I can in order to have people inquire.
Do I have time, Linnell, for another question? Quick comment.
I was just thinking of you when you were talking about the forest working through John Seed to save itself. It kind of broke my heart. I just felt like if we're all connected spiritually, all life, all consciousness, human and non-human nature, everything, then perhaps what we feel in our heart when it's breaking, when we think of these things, is coming from Mother Earth. She's crying through us for help.
Well, I think she'll be fine
acknowledge
on
that.
her own. She'll
Yeah.
be fine on her own. And if the human species ends, that's, we caused that to happen. Who was it? The great writer, funky, crazy guy, Kurt Vonnegut, said, your planet's immune system is trying to get rid of you.
Because we're toxic.
Yeah, because we're toxic. But when I say my prayers, I got this little wanky system where I go A, B, C, D, from my bulletins. I love linguistics and I love alphabet. I have an alphabet mantra song. So anyway, when I say my prayers, I go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so they're getting longer horizontally because I will add Deborah, Dolores, Derek, David, right? I keep adding. So horizontally it goes out, but I only have one for G, and that's Gaia or Gaia, however you say it. But what happens to me, and I didn't notice this for a while, but it now, when I put the pieces together, it just about brings me to tears. I'm kind of laying in my bed. I'm up against two pillows. I'm staring at the candles, and I say all my alphabetical things, and my body's just in kind of neutral, just relaxed and happy. But when I say the word Gaia, all of a sudden I noticed my shoulders kind of went down. This kind of flush goes through my body. My muscles relaxed. I didn't have any pain in my legs. It was like, this is the weirdest thing. I couldn't figure out why all that happened when I got to G. And then one day it occurred to me, it's happening because I'm praying for the earth, and I am the earth. And that's the result of my prayer. It's non-local. It takes no time. And so this is how I feel it. And how's the bush outside feeling it in a bushy way? You were feeling it that day and you just didn't know. You're driving, you go, oh, that felt good, right? Because Jan was praying for the earth and you're it. It's unbelievable. It's so mystical.
It is. It's totally mystical.
I have one more quick question, Bernice, unless you have something you wanted to ask before we're coming to the end of our time together.
Well, I remember, Jan, you mentioning in this book how important you felt desire is, and how that's maybe different than even the way the Buddhist notion of desire is generally different, interpreted differently. But you were talking about desire, and I'd love to hear more about that, what that means for you, desire, and that creativity and heartbreak is what I'm hearing. But I'm interested in what that desire moves. What kind of energy is that, and what is that contributing? How important is that? Is that
I think it's really important.
Can I get away without it?
I think there's a lot of training against desire. And in my Catholic training,
Sure.
Desire was very complicated. It's like, don't desire it because it could get sexual. Don't have any desires. It could be carnal. Don't desire because that means you're thinking about yourself instead of someone else. Quit thinking about yourself. It's selfish to desire. Tony DeMello says, do what you want. That's not selfish. Selfish is expecting other people to do what you want.
Mhm.
Now, that's a big reframe of selfish for me, and a big reframe of desire for me, especially in the convent. More of the same. Don't desire anything, anyone, just desire the Lord, have desire for the Lord. Well, when you're in the midst of the Lord, what do you have? There's, the matchstick isn't desiring the tree, right? The oak isn't desiring an acorn. They're one. You're fused with it. But here on earth, I think of the heart's desire is, what is your heart's desire? What would you do if you won the lottery?
Mm.
What would you do if there were no barriers to you doing and being anything you wanted? That's your heart's desire. And then put that next to your heart's break. What is breaking your heart, right? So my heart, one of my heart's desires in the olden days when I was more mobile, was to travel, to be with people, to be in conversations of consequence. What was breaking my heart in the 1980s? Star Wars defense system, right? No end to nuclear proliferation. So when I bounced those two things together, that gave me my marching orders to create my heart's desire matched up with my heartbreak, which was nuclear arms race. And then I began a peace pilgrimage to speak out against nuclear weaponry. And that's what I did in 20 countries.
Right.
And the first time was with the Nagasaki atomic bomb survivors. And I had pictures, I had 100 illustrations, photographs of people marching for peace with signs that say, never another Nagasaki, never another Hiroshima. And the Nagasaki survivors, they're called Hibakusha, they just wept because they said, all our lives, we thought nobody cared. And now we see it was so far away from us. People remember what happened to us.
Right.
And so we matter. We're